Yes, I actually saw a quote of yours the other day, and I screenshotted it because I think it's fucking brilliant. It's the one about I'm not Willy Wonka.
Oh yeah.
I think it's
I don't
fucking
I don't
class, man.
I don't candy coat shit. Yeah. It's truth. I just tell it like it is.
Mate, I think the way you train and I think the way you bring the energy into the gym is okay. It's seen as OG, right? It's old school, but it's also really, really fucking important. And I think people need to know how to go to those places of bring the fucking energy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
do your shit regardless of anything else. Rather than coming in and be like, I kind of feel a little bit iffy today. I'm gonna take it easy. I was like, no one cares, man. No
Yeah.
one cares. Grim Reaper's at the door. Get moving.
Yeah.
You know.
It is. It's just the way I don't want to say the way I was brought up because I only really had one mentor, but I take heed from it, and I think a lot of it gets lost in translation because people want to glorify the good, and then they want to make an example of the bad, and sometimes a lot of stuff gets lost in translation. So I try to keep it even keel both sides. I will never dilute or water down the message. So I will preach, make peace of the pain, 2 scoops of fucking heart, mix it with a tall glass and shut the fuck up. And a lot of that training mentality came from old schoolers like Dorian Yates, one of your countrymen.
Yes, sir.
But where I think I'm different is as much as I'll preach, go hard, overtrain, overload, go heavy, fuck the form police. I'm also one of the biggest advocates of how to properly recover. So I try to balance it out. You'll see me banging the shit out of weights, but then, more so back in the day, not so much now, just because the content value is not the same as what it was. A couple years ago, it was innovative to see heavy lift on Monday, then see me in the pool on Tuesday. But make no mistake about it. I've always preached, I'll bang the shit out of my body, but I'm going to be the first one to be in the sauna, to be in the pool, to do stretches, band work, blood work, speed work. And a lot of people would think of it as gym fuckery. Like I'll jump on a Tuesday, I would jump on the bench and do like 200 pounds for like 200 reps at a time with a bamboo bar. They're like, oh, that's gym fuckery. No, it looks like it, but I always write a caption. I write the description of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And, it comes to the point like I made the other day, I get so much criticism and hate for some of the methodology I've adapted and I've applied over the years. And then, I get a lot of, like someone asked me yesterday, and I wasn't rude, but someone asked me, they go, well, if you train 4 to 5 times a week, that's not enough. Everything I know as a bodybuilder, that's not enough time to recover for your muscles. I said, granted, in theory, by the book, that may be true. Your NASM, your certification is probably going to tell you that. But I'm a firm believer in you gotta practice what you preach. You gotta personify the teaching. I'm functionally fluffy, so I'm never gonna advocate that I should be a dietitian or you should follow me for nutritional advice. But what I am great at is bench press and strict curl and becoming stronger with a lot of upper body lifts. So there's the by the book method that will say train once or maybe twice a week. And I'm going to say train 3 or 4 times a week, but I'm also going to say make sure you put just as much into that as your recovery. And then I ended it with, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. If I take the advice and train like 99%, then I'll be in the 99 percentile. But as long as I'm in the top 1%, whether it was bench press, strict curl, if I applied myself to deadlift or squat, I'll always be in the top 10. I think realistically, if I applied everything to deadlift or squat, I'd be in the top 1. I've always been a guy that will focus on one. I never like to train all 3 and compete all 3. If I'm going to focus on bench, I'm going to focus on bench. I'm going to be one of the best in the world. Strict curl, I'm going to be one of the best in the world. When I'm done with this, I'm going to switch back over to deadlift. So long story short, you can either train totally fucking chaotic and weird, like a Dorian Yates, like a Phil Heath, and you'll be remembered and you'll be in that 1%. And I'll tell people, if I listened to everything you'd say, I'd be just like you. No offense when it comes to the competition and the accolades and the platform and being number 1, I wouldn't switch places. If the end result of training how you train is to be where you're at, that's not a position I want to be in. So hence, I'm not going to take advice from you. It's not a knock against you as a person or your character. It's just if I'm going to train to be the best, then I'm going to listen to the others that train similar, and I'm going to make it my own style, and that's how I'm going to train. Because if I listen to 99% of the people, I'd be with the 99%.
100%, man. Like I completely agree with that. You know, like if you do what other people do, you'll end up in the same position. Like, and if you're trying to win, you don't want to end up in the same position. That's just common sense, right? Like,
and I think history, proves itself. You see everybody, fucking Martha Stewart. I say this all the time. Cooks probably different than anybody else. Gordon Ramsay does things so fucking different than anybody else. Tiger Woods. You look at all these people are the top 1%, or they're so great at what they particularly do. They didn't train like the 99% of the people. They didn't train like the instructors. They didn't train like the book would tell them, to train. They always had some, well, that's way different. Or this person, Dorian Yates trained like, well, that's what made him Dorian Yates. And that's why we're still speaking about him. That's why he's still relevant till this day.
Yeah. Innovation, or people who were innovators were once called rebels. Yeah. Right? Yeah, you went against the curve, you went against the grain, blah, blah, blah. I mean, look at Roger Bannister. It is impossible for a human being to run some sub 4 minutes. And he goes and does it, right? Now there's like 20,000 people do it every year. Right? Just because he went against the grain and was like a rebel and just did something different. Like you've got to be able to have the audacity and the fucking balls to be like, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna stand out on my own. I'm gonna do things a little bit differently because I think that's the best version of me that it could create. And then I'm gonna go with that. So like, what is this accolades? Like, if no one has a clue who you are, like, what are your accolades? How did you get here? What do you do? What's your thing?
I started off hating. I hated getting picked on. I hated getting picked on when I was young and bullied. And, I didn't really have a father figure. So my uncle, my mom's brother, took me under his wing. He was like an amateur bodybuilder. He taught me sets. He taught me reps. He taught me, how to work out. He taught me, how to go from big compound movements to smaller movements, to go from free weights to incorporate machines, a little bit of everything. And then, football kind of took a course, American football. Junior high and high school, you obviously had a lift. We had, different programs. And then, bodybuilding was, still popular, since the 80s, and Arnold. And you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a Muscle Fitness magazine. So me, we had this thing called this program, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, where there's this big board on the wall saying, if you want to get a college, if you want to get if you want to make scholarship, or if you want to do this or that, you need to be this fast, this weight, bench press this, squat this, run this. So all these fixed measures of where you needed to be. So every day we all aspired to be like that. And then when you mix that from the power and the lifting side, and then you see, bodybuilders, you understood a little bit about the diet. You didn't really understand. I mean, in high school, you heard about PEDs, but you didn't understand how meticulous you had to be. You know what I mean? So you would see the Dorians, you would see the Nastro Centrum, you would see the, the Franco Columbos, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers. And then, all we had is Muscle Magazine, because there wasn't internet back then. So you would see, I'll never forget, I would see a Dorian Yates back workout, 5 sets of 10 rows, 500 pounds, this and this. So you knew you couldn't go in and do it, but you had the numbers, and you would always want to try to aspire to get as close to that as you can, because, eventually if you could get like this, you could possibly be that big. And then you factor in diet and everything else, and you could be like that. Because I'm 44, so growing up, if anybody told you flat out they wanted to be a powerlifter, they were full of shit. I mean, it was up and coming. It wasn't as big as it is now. But back then, I'll be the first to say it. We were all wannabe bodybuilders that were too fucking lazy to diet and to really cross over and maintain bodybuilding. So by default, we were in the gym. We loved to lift weights. So a lot of it are like, fuck it, we'll just stay with this thing called powerlifting. Because it was just a glorified after. A lot of people, I think, have the similar story. After college and competitive sports, you're kind of in this, you're not midlife crisis, but you're 23, 24, 25. You didn't make the NFL. You didn't make pro wrestling. So you're kind of like, what the fuck do I do? So you can still go to the gym and work out and be with your buddies. And that Monday night bench competition turned into, hey, there's some local power meet. So with me, after college, even during college, I didn't have the same, and I say this all the time, I didn't have the same hands-on sports, knowledgeable coaches that I did in high school, people who knew how to rap, push you and all this stuff. Because a lot of people, there was a lot of stuff floating around that was very similar to what we now call West Side. A lot of different people had old school, hardcore methods of training. And my generation, we kind of adopted that. But during college, I was like, these fucks don't know how to rap knees. They don't know how to spot all this. I'm like, dude, there's no money. There's no fame. There's no internet. So I'm like, do I keep squatting massive amounts of weight? Do I keep deadlifting? Because in high school, people will laugh, but I was like 190, pulling over 600 pounds, squatting over 600, benching. My bench press sucked. I was only like 375 in high school. I graduated when I was, 16, then turned 17. But for at 190, my lifts, were pretty good, considering I was drug free. But I was thinking, okay, if I want to get to 700, 800, 900, all this, I'm going to blow up my back and blow up my knees with people who don't know how to properly spot or push and train like I had in high school. So I said, fuck it, I can still go to the bench and find someone to spot me. So that's kind of how becoming a bench only. But all through, high school and college, my squat and deadlift were way better. My bench was probably my weakest. And if I look back, my form was shit.
Wow. And then what got you into strict curl?
Well, I did back. So 2011, 2012, I dabbled in competition, I think my first competition, I was 19. I think I did like a 490 bench press. I think at 19, I hit a 501 raw, drug free. And then I always wanted to, people like, oh, 600. So once I got to 600, during college, I felt, fuck it. The world record at the time was Scott Mendelson. It was 617 or 716, 715. I was like, well, I'm closer to 7 than I am to 6. So I'll just keep going for it. And then, I went through divorce. You kind of like, you go through divorce. Like when you get married, you kind of let yourself go a little bit, and then you're divorced, then you got to put yourself back on the market. So I want to impress my ex. I want to impress other people. So I just decided to go full force and just go competitive. Like 2012, stuck with it. Started hitting some high numbers, some 600s, worked up to a 650, 675. And then the push for 700 became real. At the time, you only had Mendelson, Spoto, James Henderson, Eric Spoto, Scott Mendelson, were the only people to go over 700 pounds. So I wanted to make that club. And then, I had a couple injuries. Krill came along and hit, 732. And then I was like, and then after a while, it's just, the strict curl came to me because, I had some ups and downs with some different companies. Me and Julius became good friends. And I was just a realist. I'm like, in my 40s, never hit 700 without surgery. Now I'm in my 40s. I'm never going to catch Julius and be the number one. I can set some master records. And then, the strict curl, it allowed me to wait, to keep some contracts, to be relevant, to stay competitive. And, I still got that drive from doing what people could, oh, you never competed. Oh, you only train in the gym. Oh, you don't ever train strict. I said, I'm going to train the way I train. I'm going to apply the same shit I did on bench. I'm just going to apply it to my arms and see where it takes me. I was self-taught on bench. No one's really name a strict curl coach. You can't. It's all pretty much self-taught. You look up stuff on YouTube. Everything everybody else does. You go and look at Dennis Saplenkov and see how he trained. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And so, I put it in a year later, set the world record, and, just going to try to keep pushing it from there.
Does it still stand?
It still stands. There's a lot of controversy around it. Just like, I think we're in the day and the age of, I think as you're climbing the ranks, everybody wants to criticize. Everybody wants to say the new is never better than the old, although the old got just as much criticism. Before Eddie hit 501, 500 kg, it wasn't going to get done. And whoever, I don't even know who did it before Eddie. That guy was probably the greatest deadlifter of all time. Then Eddie came along, and then people had shit to say about Eddie. And I say this all the time. I don't disagree with the methodology, the thought process that went into Thor, because I'll put up stuff like like the other day I put up a post just, for commentary, just, to get comments and whatever, just to get feedback. Who's bench? Which lift would you want? Julius's bench, Thor's deadlift, or Ray Williams squat? And so many people are like, Eddie. And there's nothing against Eddie, but I was like, at the end of the day, as a competitor, I don't fault Thor for peaking when he did and lifting in the climate that he was in. I would bet $1 million, and I think if people were to generally ask Thor the same, I can't speak for Thor because I don't know if he's made this comment publicly, but I would imagine if there wasn't the pandemic and he could have done his 500 or 501 in a traditional strongman or in a meet, would he have done it? I feel he would have. I don't think he's definitely proven himself. He's not the type to shy away from competition, but at the same time, if you're peaking and like he is so good at so many things, why squander that away if you might have to wait a year? Or at that time, we didn't know, was it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years? Nobody knew when we were going to go back to normal. We're 2 years something into it. We're still not back to normal. Mm-hmm. So I'll never fault him for taking advantage of the situation to be able to get it nationally, worldwide televised, get it set up, use all the calibrated plates, lift within the rules, and get the lift done. It's not, you can't fault him for not doing it in a competition that wasn't going to be held anytime soon.
Yeah, it's definitely exceptional circumstances, isn't it? Or mitigating circumstances with the whole pandemic, and you don't know, like, you need to know the end date when it comes to this absolute strength. You can be relatively strong for an average gym goer in a fucking like commercial gym, Globo gym, right? And you walk up at any day of the week and kind of push some weight and you feel strong. Fantastic. But now you're going like super maximum. We're talking breaking world record. It's fucking 501 kilos. I was like, you need to know when you're going to do that. And everything needs to be super meticulous to get you there, right?
Yeah.
Of that periodization. I'm like, Eddie, I'm going to back Eddie till the day I die because he's from like 40 minutes down the road from me. He's a fellow Northerner in the UK. Like, I love that bloke and he comes from the fucking muck like I do. But at the same time, like, I can understand 100% of the way why and when Thor did what he did. And he still fucking picked up 501 kilos from the floor, locked it out, and brought it back down to earth. Like, if you do not respect that and be like, nah, fuck you, you didn't do it. Like, no. People just like to get in a hissy fit, because it adds a little bit of drama to their life. Like,
and make no mistake about it. And I'm not saying this to take away. I'm not saying this to take away from Eddie at all. But I'll keep it factual, and I'll put myself in the same category. People could say what they want, because there's a couple things I would say because if I'm talking about from an elite point of view, and I think that's, people need to get this notion of elites need to do everything by the book like everybody else. I mean, the world's strongest man at the end of the day is an invited competition of the fucking 10 best in the world. It's not like the average Joe Blow peasant can fucking say, I want to go lift in this competition against Eddie Hall. You can't do it. So this notion that we need to keep everything all fucking fair and participation award based and everything needs to be equal and the same. No, that's not the case. And I'll be the first to say it. And it's going to offend a lot of people because I think a lot of people are triggered easily and a lot of people are soft. Well, let's make no mistake about it. Within strongman, Eddie's was king of the fucking sport, right? There's been a lot of people that have said, when you're the king, and I agree with this, when you're the king of the sport, you can pretty much dictate the order things are done, the order of competition. Did Eddie ever have to lift after 10 events when he did his, or was it pretty much the first, or when he was fresh in the competition? Look at Eric Spoto, look at Krill, look at myself. And the point I'm going to make is this is why I believe Julius Maddox is the greatest of all time, undoubtedly, for a lot of different reasons that people don't talk about. When I set my world record, I traveled 2 hours. Eddie, he pretty much lifted at Giants, was his backyard. Scott Mendelson lifted in his home state. Eric Spoto traveled an hour. I can go down the list of people that have set world records. Nobody's ever, one, traveled overseas. No one's ever probably had to travel more than 5 or 6 hours. So this notion that, Thor didn't do it under normal circumstances, name one world record that wasn't done in pretty much a home gym or their environment. You know what I mean? Is Eric Spoda, was he really at a disadvantage after to only travel an hour? Was Thor really, to me, I think it's much easier to get hyped and animated to lift in front of 10,000 than it is to go out to your own home gym and lift with 4 or 5 spotters that you're familiar. Yes, there's familiarity, but there's also low gym energy. That's why certain people train in high impact air. You know what I mean? You look at a lot of Eddie's best videos, it was in this hardcore gym around hardcore people. I've had some of my best lifts, but you ask the average lifter, I've never strict curled more in my gym than I have at a meet. I never bench pressed, unless it was touch and go, more in the gym than a meet. Most people hit higher lifts in front of a crowd on the platform because of the adrenaline. Totally. So to think that Thor didn't have what I would say is a clear advantage, but to say that it was his backyard, it was too easy. Nobody that set a significant world records ever had to travel. They all got to pick the day, the meet, and pretty much the conditions that they were going to lift it.
That's a really
it's not like
point.
Eddie did the 500, when he had to go to South Africa, or when strongman was held, he did it at Giants. Big difference than strongman, because strongman was always held someplace other than England. But no, I mean, and I'm not taking nothing away from them. I'm just saying, let's just keep it, what these people do, it doesn't matter, because I'll even say this, and that's why Julius is different, because Julius lives in Kentucky, which is like, let's just call it England. It's like living in England and London, right? It's like taking someone that lives in London and telling them they have to go all the way to Spain. That's how far he had to travel to go to set. He had to go all the way from Kentucky to Texas, which is like a 4-hour, like a 3-hour flight. Or he had to go all the way to California, which is like a 4-hour flight, if you go one way. So, and that's why I give him so much credit. He's never had the luxury of setting any of his American or world records in his home gym at even a local meet. He's never been had the luxury of being able to wake up, drive an hour, and be at a conference or a gym and say, okay, I'm going to set a world record today. He's always had to travel. And if you know the difference between traveling and competing versus waking up and rolling out of bed, you don't have to go through customs. You don't have to go through baggage claim. You don't have to be a 300+ pound guy crammed up on a flight,
Yeah, man. Like, for the average person who doesn't train, doesn't do any of this shit, traveling like fucks them up. Their sleep's all over the place. They've not eaten the same. Like, the water's all over the place. They're inflamed. The joints hurt and all that type of shit. Now we're talking about trying to break fucking world records. You know what I mean? Like, and we're talking about bigger human beings. Like, yes, it's going to like impact them, and being able to like travel and do that shit is insane. But even if you don't, right? Like, people are so quick to kind of throw some bullshit out there. But the average person doesn't need to know what 100 kilos feels like. Right, 220 pounds. Because nothing in life, especially now with like the internet and like obviously machines doing manual labor on the most part, is like the average person on the planet does never need to know what 100 kilos or 220 pounds feels like. Now, times that by 5. That's what this fella picked up from the floor. I was like,
it is. It's crazy. Not to mention there's other things. I mean, how have you gone like on the hardcore powerlifting side, like the dark side, and do you know a lot of the different things that go on? Like here, like American baseball, and they talk about uppers and greenies and other stuff. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of things that can help you the day of. It could be 15, it could be 20, it could be 25 pounds, depending on what the lift is. It's different. It's different. I will say this, and I'm not discrediting anybody, but I'll go on record and speak for myself. I've lifted lower when I have to travel, because there's things that give you, hey, you can't travel. If you do, you're fucking stupid. Back in the day, I'll say back in the day, because I don't take the same regimen now. You can't travel with test suspension. You can't travel with halotestin or halo. You know what I mean? Or in the UK, or you might have heard the check drops. You can't travel with that stuff. So being able to stay at home, or some of these, that's why you'll see some of the Hungarians and the Russians, huge lifts in Russia and Hungary when they have access to check drops and suspension or halo. And then you see here's a great example. And a lot of people are like, oh, why are you telling our secrets? Watch a lot of the lifters that are international lifters and watch what happens when they go to big dogs. Huge difference when they go to the big dogs, because you don't have access to a lot of that stuff. Same reason some people don't do well when they travel, when they compete internationally, because whether you like it or not, people aren't getting hopped up on fucking C4 or Strength Cartel pre-workout. There's other shit that goes into it that you can't travel with. So I mean, it's all part of the sport, and it evens it out. That's why I give so much credit to the guys who do travel, who still hit big lifts, because, you know, if they're free and open about it, you know, at least, you know, pretty sure what they weren't traveling with, you know, what they didn't use to help aid them. And I'm not saying everybody does. I'm just saying it's a well-known, if you're in the circle, you know, it's a well-known part of the sport that a lot of people don't talk about. And I think some of the lifters that travel, compete international, that hit huge numbers, you know, they don't get enough credit because the average person doesn't know what they can or can't do the day of.
I honestly think not talking about it hinders it more than talking about it. Like, you know, oh, fuck you guys, like you took whatever, and that's why if I did that, I'd be the same. I was like, oh, that's such a naive comment. I was like, what are you saying? Like I can pop a pill and like everything's gonna be fucking fine and dandy. I was like, you have to put in an insane amount of work. Your mindset needs to be in the right place. Everything else needs to be checked off. And yes, okay, like if that,
and it does. And you know, we talk about. I'll address this because this is an issue that doesn't get talked about. I have so much more respect for, I would like to call them my power brothers, because you all know that guy that has temper, and you already know how the sport kind of has this proverbial black eye, if you will, for like roid rage. Some of the amounts of stuff, and I'll say this, with some of the stuff like your Halo or your Tren or some of your other stuff that people, you know, might mix up or do when they're younger. I know a lot of people might have dabbled with the younger, and just talking to lifters my age, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, I'll say this, you know, the days of like high dosage or I never want to go back to those. Those are one of the reasons I was so happy to not have to do full power, or to get away from, you know, just always having to hit 600 plus on the bench. It takes its toll if you run that gambit of, you know, being enhanced. It doesn't make everything, but one of the things people don't understand you have to overcome is you have to level up so much faster, because when you're, not myself, but when you're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 350, 400 pounds, and you're running stuff, you have to keep your emotions in check, because society looks at you like you're a fucking monster anyways. A lot of people are waiting for you to do something so they can say, oh my gosh, you see how aggressive that guy is? So most of the people and that's probably what makes them professionals, most of the professionals got to go over and above and beyond to lock away those demons. You can't have a flash of rage. You can't just want to fucking choke. So although you might want, you got to do so much more to control it than your average gym goer. And I think that's a part of the mental health that people don't understand. Yes, you can take some stuff to enhance your performance, but there's so much psychological stuff that comes along with it. And most people that walk around that massive already have society looking for something to pin on them, to want to say, oh, this guy's going to snap, or, oh, he must be, you know, a bully, or he must, and you meet him. Like, I know he talks to smack. Eddie Hall's probably one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in person. Thor, Brian Shaw is probably one of the most humble human beings I've ever met in my life. But there's this notion that big guys in the gym are these barbaric, want to snap everybody. I mean, so people don't understand the amount of restraints that people have to exercise, and self-control and self-awareness, you know, to go out of the way to make other people feel comfortable around them, that I don't think enough lifters get credit for, you know? You think it was easy for a guy like Dorian to be as big as he was and to not fucking snap on people? I mean, there's certain people that you just know when you're on this side of the wall, you know, the amount of gear or preparation or diet or lack of sleep and all that stuff mixed into one. I give some of these so much credit for the stories and the humbleness and the politeness and the stuff that we don't hear about these people snap. And that's why I almost have no sympathy for the gym bros that go around and want to say, oh, well, this and that made me do it. No, you just got to exercise more self-control because you made a conscious effort to go down that road. And that's what I told myself. As much as we're all warned about the side effects and what could happen, there's times I have to check myself and say, you know what? This is not me. This is a byproduct of something that I chose to do. No one put a gun to my head and said, hey, go be a fucking world-class bencher. No one put a gun to anybody's head and said, hey, this is your only option in life. Be a strong man. You know, it's like it's a choice we all embrace and we all consciously made. So with conscious choice comes conscious responsibilities. And, you know, and that's why I give a kudos to the people who are professional, because that's one of the things that I don't think they get enough credit for, because the people want to talk about all the bad parts of the sport, but people don't want to talk about good when it's being done.
That's really insightful and a really important point, and something I wouldn't have thought about is the mental health repercussions of an enhanced lifter, right? And I think if we work towards, okay, cool, you've got this federation that is tested and this federation that is untested. You're like, okay, cool. So now we know. All right, wicked. As in, like, we know it on paper. Obviously, we know, but we know it on paper. Yeah. I'm like, okay, wicked. So now we can create, you know, we've got rehabilitation centers and therapists and all that for fucking cannabis and alcohol and tobacco and all that shit. But there's also everything else, right? And it's like, well, why can't we provide people with some aid? What? Because it's like a back alley thing of sport. I was like, mate, this shit in the NFL, this shit in the Premiership of football, this shit in the Olympics, you know what I mean? Like, never mind. Like, there's two separate sides to sport now. I think we all need to grow up, right? There's two separate sides. We can have the tested and the untested, and let's just see what human beings are capable of.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe two things to be true. I think everyone should have their own sandbox. You know, I don't have respect for people who know they play, you know, dirty and they want to go to the clean sandbox. To me, that's cheating. I don't think enhancing your performance necessarily is blatant cheating. I think knowing that you're doing something and then going in a tested federation where it's supposed to be clean, to me, that is the cheat. But like I said, I think everybody deserves to have their own sandbox. And like you said, I think there needs to be more done for people to rehabilitate or get used to normal life after competition. But at the same time, I'm also going to be the first to tell you the only true test is no test. You know, because how many times? I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. If the IOC is the most strictest, well-funded organization to test and implement anti-doping policies, and we could go down the list of names of people who weren't caught to be dopers until after the fact. And this is the IOC. This is the golden seal, the example of what a tested federation is supposed to be. If they can't implement and force it, then what makes you think the IPF or the USA powerlifting, who is only charging, you know, a minimal membership and people are working as volunteers, they're not well funded. They don't have sponsorship like Coca-Cola, Nike, Google. They don't have this long list of benefactors to help put money into keeping the sport ethically clean. So if they can't get it right with all their funding and knowledge and doctors and data and research and testing centers, how you think I honestly am going to trust the IFP because they have someone with gloves and take someone in a stall? And no, I'm not knocking the lifters, but the only true test is no test. And I've said this on record. I've lifted and I feel like shit because of this. 2012, I went to a tested federation. I said, oh, don't worry about it. They're only going to test like 6th and 7th place. And I went in there and won a national championship. And they just said, here's your trophy, and just said, okay, we're going to get you out of here now because, who wants you to wait in line for a piss test? I was young. I was new to the sport. I didn't see anything wrong with it. And I think that opened my eyes, and I made a conscious effort that, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't going to sit here and be Johnny on the spot, good boy Samaritan and say, okay, here, USAPL, here's your national championship act. I didn't do that, but I made a conscious effort to never again lift an attested federation, because I knew what I was, and I knew what I wasn't doing.
I think you are right. There's always going to be people bending and breaking the rules, right? That's inevitable. And no matter how good the tests get in whatever federation, there's always going to be ways around it, right? But yeah. I think, kind of calling on the common decency of people, which is tough, I know, of if you able to create like two avenues of be like, okay, you have the option now, right? You don't have to kind of break the rule. You have the option. I think there's going to be less. And then maybe you can, kind of spread that funding out a little bit more, but who knows, man? Like I think you have got a very, very, very valid point of the only test is no test. I hear it all the time of like, oh, it'd be really cool to see, a version of the Olympics where they're allowed to do what they want and we could see what human beings are capable of like these freaks of nature. And I'll be like, we do. It's called the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, here's something else to think about. I'll kind of throw this curveball at you. Or what do you guys call cricket? Like a pit? I don't know. Whatever you guys do in cricket. Baseball America, we say curveball. Cricket, I don't know what's
curveball. Yeah, but I ain't a cricketer, man. Cricket's for a posh sport. I don't play that shit. No, it's not even a sport to me.
Okay, but here's a good point. I would bring this up, and this can be debatable for the viewers watching this. I would say the whole notion of drug free is kind of this fallacy and this masquerade ball of just a way to dangle sponsorship and create guaranteed revenue for federations. It's kind of like this proverbial good old boy system, because here's the difference. And everybody wants to be, the old, look good, play good, this and that. But here's something I'll tell you. If you sit back and you think about it, look at all the endorsement deals with major companies and the IPF or USA, especially the IPF. You watch all these people versus like powerlifting. You have some sponsored athletes in like the USPA and WRP. And here's the distinction I'll make. You have sponsored athletes who wear kind of this or that. And where I'm going with this is people want to talk about, we want it to be drug free. We want to see the best of the best. My feelings are the people who live drug free, they still want to do everything under the sun to give them every competitive fucking advantage available, and then hide behind, well, I did it drug free because I didn't take a needle. But when it comes to the ability to, say, for example, bench press, to arch within the rules, to wear the tightest fucking wrist wraps, the tightest belt, the perfect shoes, these people aren't spending money on gear, but they're spending top fucking dollar on every piece of enhancement equipment that has been certified by the fucking federation. You can't go to you'll never, here's what I'll say, almost never. I'd say you go to your average IPF or USA powerlifting meet, and even look at you can just YouTube it. Everybody is dressed to the fucking T. They got their A7 shirt, they got their wraps, they got their Pioneer. And I'm not knocking these companies for making a profit. I live in America. We're a capitalistic society. I'm all for the entrepreneur. However, you look at some of these other federations, the non-tested federations, do you see them pushing as much shiny new equipment to enhance their lift? They just kind of go out there in their t-shirt or kind of whatever. They might match. They might have a little bit of flair to them, but they're not. You won't see them do an interview and say, thank God for this, double strap 2-ply Pioneer belt, or my injured triple ply X double platinum zero shirt, or these, stiff unbreakable wraps, thank God for this chalk. It's like a big racket. Like, okay, we're not going to let you take drugs, but we're going to have you push all this other equipment. Like, You go to the gym and it's funny. I think it was Powerlifting Motivation did the meme where someone was walking through and they couldn't walk through the gym because they had to dodge all these cameras. I've been to so many gyms when I live in California where you have these new powerlifters and they think first and foremost they have to have the Nike shoes, the Pioneer belt, the fucking A7 shirt, the perfect wraps. They have to be using the perfect chalk. You know, they have to have their West Side Conjure, method program right there. They have to buy the latest, selfie stick to fuck. It's like, dude, these guys are pushing and making so much money for these federations with endorsement deals. And it's like, fuck, spend $100 on some tests and watch your lifts go up and don't worry about your wraps or your shoes or your belt or your fancy shirt and all this other stuff. I'm not knocking. I mean, but you get what I'm saying.
It's
like,
that's
you ban it and they still find a way to push the limits and call it legit.
Well, I played sport, right? So I was a swimmer, which isn't really, you can't really bend the rules with that, apart from if you PED. And well, in fact, they did create these new suits that make you more buoyant, but then they got banned after like 2 years.
Wasn't that the Phelps issue or something? They had these new Nike or something suits.
Yeah. But then most of my sport career, so to speak, I played rugby, right? Which is, you know, obviously super physical and whatever. And like, mate, you get taught the rules of the game, right? And then you also get taught the rules of the game, right? And it's completely different. Like, oh, okay, like there's somebody's hand there, you know, on the floor and they're kind of holding onto the ball and they shouldn't be. Well, you're wearing studs. If you step on said hand and the referee can't see it, they're not going to put their hand on the ball again. You know what I mean? It's like if it bends the rules, it bends the rules. You get away with it. And through sport, we see that as a given, right? Oh, I'm going to put a little bit of a shoulder badge playing football, as in soccer. Like, oh no, whatever. Like these things happen. You know, hand kind of touches the ball. These things happen. You know, I get in a little cheap shot just to get one over on you to remind you next time that you go to catch that ball, I'm going to be in your fucking face. These things happen, you know. But when it comes to fucking lifting, when everyone thinks they're a friggin' expert, right? Because anyone can sign up to a global gym and get a bloody City Fitness membership, right? When it comes to lifting, like, oh no, everything needs to be completely legit. I was like, man, I played rugby. I came up, I played county. So it's, I guess, the equivalent of playing state over in America. Played for my club, played for my school, you know, knock on the door of academy, and then I got injured. But I know for a fucking fact there's people that I'm playing against who were on PEDs, right? And this is like people still growing, still developing as young men, right? And if we watch professional sport and they're bending the rules and also breaking them in the old, you know, locker room, do this until you're 19, you're going to get fucking huge. Okay, fine. Then we're going to go watch something that is untested, right? And be like, this is just part of the sport because we're testing the capabilities of a fucking human body, right? Like truly, not in this sport to kick an oval shaped ball through a fucking set of sticks or whatever. No, truly, what is a human body capable of? Everyone sits on the couch with a thumb in their ass and be like, no, you're not allowed that. And I was like, guys, like, come on, like just watch it for the entertainment, for the admiration, for the motivation. And like, I don't know, maybe it inspires you to go to the gym and like lift some weights. Maybe, you know, it doesn't mean you have to like fucking take 15 different gear to get you like moving around and lifting. This is like the pinnacle. That's the top of Everest, right? Everest has a very wide base.
Yeah. it's true.
Fucking
it's true
funny,
because
man.
I mean, I just, you know, I like how people open it up, you know, the talk and the discussions, because it's one of those things where, you know, I dealt with this, you know, all my career. Like, oh, if I did this or that, well, you know what? There's more people at most gyms that do run stuff, but yet none of them are walking around elites. There's a, you know, you can count on paper how many people, you know, have probably taken gear versus how many people have reached, you know, certain milestones. And that's why for the longest time, you know, I always say my personal experience, I think Julius is probably, I said this the other day, I think Julius Because for the longest time he didn't run, anything. He, recently he's had, testosterone therapy because he tested, he had low testosterone. So is it really enhanced, or is he just replacing what's been diminished? But at the end of the day, I said this, and this is another point I'd make. When we get in this controversy about what's the truest lift and this and that, I'd say as great as Eddie and Thor's deadlift was, it used their legs, their back, their arms. It was 1,000 pounds. Fucking monumental feat. Julius is 790. Julius, when he hits 800, he's just doing it in wrist wraps and fucking a t-shirt, and he's using his arms. So when you weigh it out, because people are like, oh, deadlift is a king of lifts. I'm like, but is it really? When the king of all lifts is only 200 a pound, or pounds above, X amount of kilos above, what someone did with just their arms versus something that was done with full body and mostly legs. I was like, you shouldn't be able to compare the two. So that's why I don't think the bench press and where it's going gets enough credit as probably being the hardest lift to master. And I'd also say this, if, when asked if you were to talk about the potential, I don't think, as great as they were, I don't think, Eddie or Thor could have walked away from being king of deadlifts and turned around and only focused on bench and got to an 800-pound bench. I think Julius could walk away from bench and focus just on deadlift and get pretty damn close to 900 or 1,000. So if we're talking about potential, who has more potential to duplicate the others' master lift if they were to just, because we hear this all the time. I heard it as a bench guy. Julius is so great because he only focuses on bench. Yeah, but I'm sure if he put his efforts to deadlift or squat, he'd be top 10 in the world all time as well. And I don't think you could say that about, like, as much as he's a fucking phenom, John Hack is not ever going to touch an 800-pound bench. But I think Julius could do a 900-pound. Yeah, obviously they're different body weights, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to put in perspective how massive. What's the kilos? 400 or 390 or something? 400, 800
900.
pounds. Yeah.
I'll get the calculator up. What do you want? 800, 900?
800-pound bench is what? How many kilos?
800 divided by 2.2. It's 364 kilos.
Yeah. I mean, you got
364 kilos. You know what I mean? Like that's fucked up insane. And people don't compare heptathlon to javelin. Right? They don't, right? Because they're two separate entities. So that's the way I love anything sport, anything fitness, any not any sport. I don't like golf and cricket and all that shit. It's just not for me. But like any strength sports, I'm all about it. If I'm doing it or not doing it, I'm a weightlifter. I prefer that. But I rate it so much. And the way I see it is, okay, cool. Powerlifter, you're going for total. Wicked. Oh, you bench only, you're going for bench. Oh, you're going for your deadlift. Or you squat. It's like they are completely separate entities. And I think it's hard for people to be able to relate to that just because they don't know the sheer fucking like stress your body goes under, getting under that amount of weight, right? And it is all relative. But if you get the average person and put them under, say, 90% or over, right? They're going to have a newfound respect for everything else.
Exactly. And I think that's how it should be. And that's why I love this conversation because you're so open-minded to other stuff that's not just your discipline. I think we live in like a world society that's kind of an all or nothing. I think people have this notion that you have to be great at all three. I don't care. I like what I like, and I like to root. I like to root for people. I like to see people become the best. But it's funny how, a guy like, strict curl with me or bench press or Julius with bench press. So many people want to discredit people when they say like, oh, well, he didn't do all three or this person was. I mean, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Do people, to be considered strong or elite, do you have to be good at all three? Is anybody really going to consciously give two fucks what John Hack's bench press is? Or is he always going to be known at his deadlift? Same with Ray. do people really care what other sports and strongman Eddie was good about? Or are they always going to remember, I mean, he was a great presser too, don't get me wrong, but they're going to remember the guy's deadlift. Same with Thor. So it's just like, I mean, and we see this all the time with so many other sports. It's granted Michael Jordan was great as a defensive basketball player, and so was Kobe, but people are always going to remember them as scorers. I just think it's so funny when people think you have to be well-rounded to be considered, great at this or great at that. I think, no, just enjoy people for what they are.
And you're judging it from the pinnacle, right? Everyone's going to have their strengths. And if their strength is the best in the world, legitimately world record breaking, the best, now you're saying that every other part of this person's game needs to be world record breaking. That's a freak. That's a mutant. That's impossible. We're human beings. Yeah. That's not going to happen, right? Your weakness is not going to break a world record, just as your strength is going to break a world record. So if your strength is a fucking bench press, right, and your weakest lift is, I don't know, a squat, right, and you go into a powerlifting meet, you're not going to fucking break all three.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I have this, I'll get into like these little quarrels with people all the time. People say like, oh, why don't you ever show squats or deadlift? I'm like, as long as if it's me and you man to man having this conversation, and my bench press is more than your squat or deadlift, why are we even having this conversation? You're discrediting me because only my bench is better than your squat or deadlift, but I don't post enough deadlift. It's like, why do I have to? That I get that so many times, like, oh, you can curl, but what about your deadlift? Like I did this a couple months ago. I had someone tell me that, because I don't train legs. I'm like, I train legs, I just don't post it. I don't like posting it. I don't enjoy it. And they're like, well, could you deadlift 600 pounds? And so I did a video without straps where I rode like 500 for 5. And I'm like, let's do something here. I just bent over, rode 500 for 5, but you're questioning if I could pick up 600 pounds. And the same criticism I got with strict curl. There's so much controversy because the fabrication of the rack that we use in competition, their dimensions weren't, the bar that you rack it on wasn't wide enough for you to clearly get your hands and self pick it up. So part of the rule, just like bench press, it's not, you don't get disqualified if you self hand off. No one expects anybody to self rack in a bench press competition. You're allowed the spotter to hand it to you. But because one or two people who like Dennis, oh, you didn't pick it up like Dennis did. Well, if I was given the chance, I tell people, let's think about something from common sense. Do you think it's easier to have someone hand you 250 pounds and you have to adjust midair holding it and get your hands right? Or do you think it's easier to have it centered where you can have it on the rack, dig in your hands, get your grip, and then self-lift it and walk it back yourself? It's like if I were to hand you 100-pound or dumbbell, or what is it, 550 kg. I was hand you a 50 kg dumbbell. Would it be easier for you to pick it up the rack and then get it set yourself, or is it going to be harder if I hand it to you midair and then you have to center balance it yourself? I was like, never in any sport is it easier to hand it off and have to readjust than having someone, than self-lifting. Now, bench press, it's harder to self-unrack. But when you self-unrack, you're still holding it. Imagine if I was to say, you got to bench press 200 kg, but you can't grab the bar until it's in midair. It's like, how is that easier than getting it set on the rack and coming with the bar out to you? You know what I mean? It's like people want to put all these, well, he didn't do this or he didn't do that. So it's like I go through it all the time. I like it because it makes me want to improve stuff. So when I do go to a meet, like at the Arnold, when the rack is set the same and I'm able to pick it up, it's like, what are they going to say then? Because I'm cocky and I have a chip on my shoulder and I have a memory like an elephant when it comes to that. Someone I used to look up to and idolize. I don't know if are you familiar with, the whole situation about the American record and strict curl and some of that stuff that was going on?
No.
Okay. Well, there is someone who's famous who had the American record. And and they came out very vocal against when I set the American record, which is, I would say 110 or something kg. It was 225 pounds.
Oh,
so
that's like 102.
So so 102, 103, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I broke it, and then there was all this shit talk. Then I did it again at a meet. I said it again, did 226, and then I went on to set the world record. Even more shit talk. Oh, well, we don't recognize when he first broke the American and this and that. And so this is the kind of guy I am. For shits and giggles, my last meet that I went to, I only had to win the meet, and anything over 200 pounds. 200 pounds in America is a huge strict curl. No one, I don't think, except for CT, who had the American record for 25 years, has gone over the 200-pound mark.
I love that
guy.
I
did. Huh?
I love that guy.
So, well, that's who the beef was with. So, so he was mad that I broke his record, and then there's all this. Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and so this last week that I went to it's called a qualifier. You just got to hit X weight to qualify to get your official invite for the Arnold, which is supposed to be like the World Championships. I already had the world record, so technically I was still going to get my invite, but I wanted to be a man of the people. So I was like, okay, I'll go to this qualifying meet and I'll get on stage and I'll do my lift. So I opened up, I think, with like 204, 209 pounds. Did it. At that point, no one was going to touch that. So I already won the meet. You know what I mean? So the meet was already won because no other lifter was going to touch that. And in my mind, I said to my friends and I said to my training camp, you know what, just to make a point to be just the ultimate, like, fuck you, I'm going to do something that nobody in the history of powerlifting has probably ever done. If you go to you're familiar with powerlifting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go to, you do your squat, your deads, your bench. When you go to bench, how many times in that session, in that singular, when you hit the platform, how many times do you have to lift the bar?
One.
Squat, how many times do you have to lift the bar?
One.
Deadlift, how many times do you have to lift the bar?
One. Did you double it?
So I said on record before I went to the meet, I said, just to show everybody that I don't respect this record, I'm going to up the record, the previous record, by 1 pound. And I'm going to do it for a double, strict, on the platform, in a sanctioned meet with referees and judges right there. So my second attempt, my camp, they're up backstage, they're laughing because they know what I'm about to do. So I go out there, the ref's looking at me, he gives me the go ahead and lift. So I lift, I hold it, and then I come back down. He's like, okay, wrap. I stay there, totally sanctioned against the platform. I lift again, and the ref, I knew the ref, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And then I get done, and I knew already it was going to be a disqual. I got red lights, and people were like, why do you get red lights? And so I did it, and I was like, I'm going to do this lift I'm going to do just for the Instagram. So I did it, and it was amazing to me how many people are like, well, it looked good, why didn't it count? And at that point right then, I was like, in my mind, and for the people who know the sport, they understand the fuck you to, the other record. They understand what I just did. But it made me realize how the common person who you think understands and you assume they kind of know the rules or their do's or don'ts of a sport were clueless. Because to me, it should have been common knowledge why it was a red light or why it didn't count. Mm-hmm. And so I was in these little comments with people, why didn't it count? You did them both perfect. Well, because technically you're only supposed to do it once.
Yeah.
And, so it's one of those times where sometimes you assume that people understand what they're seeing or why, and then you have to realize they really don't. So I can't even get mad because there's probably a lot of people out there that don't even know strict curl is a sport.
No, there's going to be a hell of a lot of people out there that don't realize that, they just think it's that knobhead in the gym that wants to be the biggest. You're like, it's a sport. It's a legitimate strength sport, and it's a movement, and we, there's rules, and and we go for gold. Like
I don't make it any easier with the training because I tell people if you want to get better at strict curl, don't train strict. practically 95, 98 or 95 or 98, somewhere around there, of everything I post is non-strict. You'll hardly ever see me train traditionally against the wall and do a competition style lift. And I did the same thing with bench. I never went in and really just practice, set up, pause, this. I mean, I knew how to lift with the commands, and that just wasn't my training style. And I didn't feel obligated to have to show competition. But at the same time, a lot of people are like, they're like, and I get this all the time. Well, if you compete in the sport, why don't you train like the sport? And I'm like, I don't know.
This works for you, man. Law of individuality.
And that's what I tell everybody. The best, you ask me the best program or this, say whatever works for you. Whatever's going to keep your engagement, whatever's going to keep you going back, what is ever going to keep you wanting to be the best version of you. That's the best program. That's the best lifting style. You can tweak it. There's like bench press. Some people like to be out wide. Some people here. There's going to be fundamental things that you need to understand and master. But there's enough of it you can tweak in the training and make your own. Because at the end of the day, you still have to go out and perform the lift to the best of your ability.
I agree. I totally agree. Brother, I got 3 questions. Right, I like to end on the same 3 questions, and I think people's perspective and answers on these are wicked. Like it helps me, and never mind anybody else. So, question 1 is: what's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received? Never give up on what you're passionate about. You always have people give you criticism, unsolicited criticism. You have to trust in your ability to overcome adversity if you ever want to be able to truly call yourself a success. Nothing's going to be handed to you. You got to be able to work and face adversity and overcome it. And I think you have to be able to go back and keep that motto of just never give up on yourself. It's one thing to say, I'm not going to give up at this or that. Ultimately, just don't give up on yourself. Don't believe in your own ability to overcome a situation. That I hope everybody pays that attention, and whatever that passion lies, or wherever that passion lies, right? It doesn't matter if it's in the gym or whatever. Just don't fucking give up on it. It's what sets your soul on fire. It's what builds you into the person you are, and that's what keeps us going. So yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a guy that lives through passion.
Yeah.
Number 2, what's the worst piece of life advice you've ever received?
It's okay to be like everybody else. Because I think everybody, we live in this day and age where I think everybody wants to, there's so much talk of being self-made, an entrepreneur, self-starter, self-go-getter, all this other stuff. And what constantly you hear constantly in business, what separates, whether it's a business, a brand, a trademark, its uniqueness and its sole propriety. It's what distinctively makes it different. What are you bringing to the marketplace that differentiates itself from your competitors? And at the end of the day, the answer to everything you desire is always going to be inward. You are your own brand. You are your own uniqueness. There's no other fucking you in the world. So if you can't make that your mission statement, your livelihood, your sole purpose, the reason that you believe in yourself, because you have been put on this earth with the ability and capability to be distinctively fucking unique, and understand and embrace and appreciate that opportunity, that there's only going to be one you. You only get one shot. Everybody gets one shot. So why do I want to spend and waste and squander my God-given ability to be the best version of fucking me, to be a watered-down version of you?
That's fucking powerful shit, man.
Because I can never be you. And I'm not knocking you as a person, but you're fucking you, and I'm me. And if I try to be you, it's only going to be watered down, because there can only be one fucking you. Yes, sir. But I need to believe in the ability to be the best fucking me.
Ain't that the truth? All right. What is 3 words you tell your younger self?
Never give up.
Fuck, man. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time, man. That's absolutely badass.
I appreciate you. Thanks,
mate. Appreciate it, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And I can't wait till I can fucking leave the border and travel the states, and we'll maybe we might get a curl in or two. Have a coffee.
Yeah, I don't know if they do in Australia, or Zealand, but I'm a foodie. Maybe you guys have prawns. Maybe you throw a fucking prawn on the Barbie.
It's more like fucking Australia, but yeah, man, like they do good lamb here, real good.
Oh,
lamb.
I love the lamb. You know what I don't know. Do they have I remember something they had every place. They don't have it here. Souvlaki.
Souvlaki. Oh man, that's naughty stuff. That's real good.
Yeah, I love souvlaki. It's amazing. Probably one of the best memories I have of Australia is going to this lambs and getting souvlaki.
Yeah, if anyone's never tried souvlaki,
it was literally called lambs.
So good.
Yeah,
so good. Well,
all right, man.
Maybe one day
we'll
grab a souvlaki and a fucking lift.
Yeah. All right, man.
Take it easy.
Take care.
Enjoy your day.
You too.
Peace.